with us on this Monday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary from the North Country. We've had some weather up here. Straight line winds, 40, 50, and 60 miles an hour. Here in Minnesota, it's been pretty amazing. Of course, tomorrow night is going to be the first Democratic debate. We will be there. I will be in the spin room for Bernie Sanders. We'll preview that coming up on this production of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. But I want to talk about Trump first, because the polling is still there. The fact is that 42% the CBS poll say that they are paying attention to this presidential cycle, more so than they did the last time. Also, interestingly enough, is that Trump is at 27%, Carson at 21%, and Cruz is at 9%. Now, Bernie Sanders isn't the only one drawing big crowds. Down in the state of Georgia over the weekend, it was 7,700 people who showed up to watch Donald Trump, and Trump seems to be just gravitating to these people. It's like they're feeding him. They're feeding his ego. And this conversation about, well, he might get out. How long will he do well in the polls? This guy is in it for the long haul.
I love this. I love the people. I love the country. We're never, ever getting out of this deal. Okay? Ever. Ever. We're winning. We're going to take it to Cleveland, where we have the convention. And after that, we're going to beat Hillary or whoever it is so badly.
I have a prediction. I think Donald Trump is going to build a hotel in Cleveland before this is over with. He loves it so much. And the entertainment continues. He loves to go after Marco Rubio. I don't know if there's a Florida component here or not, but Rubio seems to be the target of entertainment when Trump goes out on the stump.
They said to Marco Rubio, "Are you having fun?" He's sweating like a pig. I never saw a guy sweat like this. The sweat is pouring down. Now think of this. Now we all agree Putin is a pretty tough customer, right? But here's the problem with Rubio. When you sweat that much, now think of it. So you have Putin, he's sitting over here. And he's waiting to kill the stupid Americans because he's been just destroying us so badly. So he figures, and a guy walks in and he's soaking wet and sweating. Hello, can I have some water? And Putin's sitting there, what the hell kind of stuff is this? This is not exactly a poker player, folks.
You know, I am totally entertained by Trump. I think this is so much fun. I look forward to his stump speech. And time again. And, of course, I've never liked Rubio. I've thought he's been a punk for a long time, an arrogant son of a gun who thinks he knows everything about the world. He has no record. He's never signed a paycheck in his life. And I think Trump, in his own way, is pointing that out to people about what a real rookie Rubio really is. All right, now, to Bernie Sanders. The term socialist keeps being thrown at Bernie Sanders. And Claire McCaskill started it on one of the morning shows on the cable shows when she said months ago that she didn't think that a socialist could be elected president. Some organizations have bought into that. The National Education Association, when they endorsed Hillary Clinton, they thought that she was the most electable. You know what? It's almost as if all of the templates and all of the formats and history doesn't matter this time around. There is a movement that has taken place. Now, this is going to be an extraordinary opportunity for Bernie Sanders to go into this debate tomorrow night and prove to the American people, a whole set of eyes and ears and minds across the country that haven't been paying attention to him. There's going to be a ton of independent voters who are going to be watching this. They're going to be looking for Hillary to do something. And Sanders, who has been Mr. Consistent throughout his entire political career, is going to be there. And people are going to realize that, you know, he's not the whacked out guy that the mainstream media tries to make him out to be. So Sanders is setting the table in a very interesting manner on Meet the Press, turns this socialist term around and asks the question.
The other day I noticed you said, you know what, don't use the word socialist. I'm gonna say I'm a progressive. No. Are you pushing back on the idea, or you embrace I'm a European socialist?
Look, when one of your Republican colleagues gets on the show, do you say, are you a capitalist? Have you ever referred to them as capitalists?
Yeah. Are you a capitalist?
No. I'm a democratic socialist. But what I mean is I've been elected as an independent throughout my political career. I am running now in the Democratic nomination process and will support, I hope to win, I expect to win, but
you'll support the Democratic nominee?
I will.
He will. He will support the Democratic nominee. I'd like to hear Hillary and the rest of these guys say that as well. But if we're going to get into identity politics, that's elementary, and it's unworthy of the process as I see it in contemporary time. There are a new set of issues that are very extreme to a lot of Americans right now. Bernie Sanders is striking the nerve of a populist candidate. You can call him a socialist all you want. Doesn't matter. All people want their health care, they want their education, and they want a better future for their kids. That's what this is about. When we come back, Jonathan Alter gives us a preview of the first Democratic debate, which is tomorrow night in Las Vegas, and I will be in the spin room for Bernie Sanders. We're right back after this. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. To continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Subscribe to the Ed Schultz podcast today. Simply log on to iTunes, search for Ed Schultz, and click the subscribe button to have the show delivered to your preferred listening device daily, free of charge. Rate and review the podcast to tell us how we're doing. More details at wegoted.com.
Is Paul Ryan going to take the deal? Is he going to be Speaker? Ruth Conniff coming up to talk about that in just a moment. But first, I want to check in with Jonathan Alter, political analyst for MSNBC and also columnist for the Daily Beast and author of The Center Holds Obama and His Enemies. Jonathan, good to have you back with us.
Great to be here, Ed.
Tomorrow night is the first of 6 Democratic debates. And there's going to be, I think, a lot of Americans who are going to be watching this that are curious about Bernie Sanders and don't know much about him. But they're also going to be somewhat curious about how Hillary is going to handle this candidate that has pretty much come out of nowhere that no one really predicted on the Democratic side. What's the mission for Clinton tomorrow night, other than not to make a major stumble? What is the mission in going after Bernie Sanders?
Well, first of all, I don't think she's going to go after him in a big way. I just think that her strategy is, we're Democrats. We don't fight as much as those Republicans do. We agree on a lot of issues. I have respect for him as my colleague. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of fisticuffs on a personal level. You're not going to see Bernie Sanders hammering Hillary on emails. But, on issues, they will accentuate the differences. So I think that she is going to be critical of Sanders' position on gun control. Because his answer on that, which is, I'm from Vermont and we don't like gun control very much in Vermont, is going to be a surprise to a lot of liberal Democratic voters who, in the wake of all these shootings, want to see more common sense gun safety legislation, like background checks and closing the gun show loophole and that kind of thing. And his voting record is really open to criticism on that, and she will charge right into that. On the other side, I think Sanders is going to go, not go after, but he's going to be critical on a substantive level of Hillary's flip-flops, for instance, on the TPP trade deal. She said, I think CNN counted on 45 occasions. She said that this was a great deal, and she was involved in the early negotiations, and now she's against it. And Sanders is going to make it seem as if she's changing her position for political expedience.
And he did that yesterday on Meet the Press. Listen to this.
Why should that matter to a voter that you've held this position for much longer, say, on TPP,
Good question.
than Secretary Clinton?
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you why it should matter. And let me be very clear. I mean, I happen to respect and like Hillary Clinton, so I don't get into personal attacks. You know that. But are there differences of opinion that should be discussed? Of course there are. That's what that election is about. I believe that our trade policy is going way back when. I voted against NAFTA, CAFTA, PNTR with China. I think they have been a disaster for the American worker, allowed corporations to shut down here, move abroad. So people will have to contrast my consistency and my willingness to stand up to Wall Street and corporations, big corporations, with the Secretary.
So there is Bernie Sanders saying, here's my record that goes way back on trade. And he has a record to stand on because all of these trade deals arguably have not been good for America. And now Hillary Clinton shows up. Is it political expediency for her to all of a sudden oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership when every union in this country is against it? So I think that's where she is still somewhat vulnerable. Your thoughts?
I agree with that. She is going to look like she's just doing this because this campaign has been strong so far. And what she'll say is, well, I don't agree with you on NAFTA, which my husband negotiated, and this idea that we can be a protectionist nation and that we don't need any of these trade deals, and all these trade deals over the years that you've voted against, you've been wrong because they've expanded trade and that's helped create jobs in the United States. This particular deal I have questions about and will continue to have questions about and think the deal, should be changed. But she'll try to take a more sort of centrist position that doesn't reject all trade deals out of hand, and she'll try to make Sanders look as if he's not examining the specifics of the trade deals and is just against them ideologically, and in that sense go for more centrist Democratic voters.
Yeah. Well, the quick political talk on this is the majority of Democrats in the Senate are against it. The majority of Democrats in the House are against it. So now she can say she stands with her party. Bernie Sanders can say, I've led all the way on this. It'll be interesting how that all plays out. What else do you think is going to be? Is this going to be a boring Democratic debate? Bernie Sanders says that the network news doesn't pay attention to him because he's boring and all he talks about is the issues. He doesn't take any shots at anybody.
Well, if people define this as entertainment, and I think that Donald Trump has turned these into entertainment spectacles, they're going to be very disappointed. This is going to be a substantive debate. They're going to be talking about, trade issues in detail. They're going to be talking about, who has the better plan for regulating banks in detail. So, if people want to understand better what the big issues are, they should watch. If they want to see one of these candidates deck the other candidate, they should watch something else.
All right, let's talk Donald Trump for just a moment. He is now saying that he would have no problem if Paul Ryan steps in and becomes Speaker of the House. Here it is.
Paul Ryan's name is mentioned as a possible speaker. What do you think of Paul Ryan?
Well, I think he's somebody that could get good support. I think he's a very nice person. I think he doesn't want it very badly, but you never know. Maybe he's playing one of the great games of all time. It is Speaker of the House. I mean, it's a great position. But he doesn't seem to want it. But I'll bet you that if it was actually offered to him, he would take it.
You said you want somebody strong. Is Paul Ryan strong?
I think he's strong.
What do you make of Trump's generic answers? He's never very detailed. In fact, he doesn't get into the weeds. He doesn't get into the weeds on what he would do if he were president. He turns every soundbite into vanilla, generic, and then, of course, if he can't weave his way through the detail, he turns it into an entertainment soundbite. Yet, Jonathan, he still leads and has been for months. The most recent CBS poll shows him at 27% among likely Republican primary voters. They just can't seem to trump Trump. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's a huge problem for the Republican Party, and if he gets the nomination, it could be a huge problem for the United States. When you get one of these big party nominations, you're a threat to actually be the next president, which is unimaginable in my mind, and would be maybe the most disastrous thing in the history of American politics were it to happen. I don't think very many people are going to peel off Donald Trump, and so he's going to go down some. But if he's at 20%, okay, what is his floor? I'm just guessing here because we're in uncharted territory, and the pundits, including me, we've been totally wrong about this guy. But I think there's got to be a hardcore 15%, maybe 20%, but at least 15% of Republicans who he could say anything. He could hang his butt outside Macy's window and still keep their vote, right? He is truly gaffe-proof for that group of people, and that means he will go into that Republican convention in Cleveland next summer with a whole lot of delegates. And then even if the Republicans, unify around Marco Rubio or John Kasich or Jeb Bush or, somebody else, he will make life very difficult for them and have a lot to say about what's in the Republican platform, what happens at that convention, and what face they present to the country. But remember, 27%, that's of Republicans, okay? Yeah. So that's a quarter of 45%, according to the last electorate, of the last election of the electorate. So it's still a minority of a minority, okay? So this idea that everybody in America or large chunks of America like Trump is not right. I spoke at about 25% of Americans, at best, who like him, and the other 75% can't stand him.
Well, he's much broader than the Republicans. I spoke with a union head last week who said one of the scary things is if you polled our people right now, about a third of our union workers would go with Trump, because
that is frightening.
And that is frightening. And then you look at his position on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and he goes so far as to challenge where Paul Ryan would be on those issues. Here it is.
I disagree with some of the things. I think that when Mitt Romney chose him last time, it was a tough choice because he's been so anti-Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security in a sense. Now, he would say he hasn't been, but they certainly played that up hard. And that was a disastrous campaign for a lot of reasons. But Paul Ryan's a good man. I know him very little, but I think he's a very good person.
So you'd be okay with...
Okay, good person. We got all that. But the fact is that Donald Trump has said that he would not dismantle and privatize Social Security. He's even gone so far as to health care for all, and he'd have a better plan than Obamacare. Look, this is conversation that the Republicans view as toxic. They won't even go in those arenas. What do you make?
Well, this is what to me is so interesting, and the sort of positive side of Trump is that he is touching that third rail when it comes to Republican orthodoxy, right? So that party has had this problem for many years where they believe things that the American public find repugnant, like, well, let's slash Medicare and Social Security. And Trump, being a demagogue, he understands how you have to get right with the public on core issues like that. Sure. And I think that would also apply to his views on trade, where he has a view that's going to be very popular with a lot of union members. He actually called for a trade war. He used that word war. You and I disagree some on this issue, Ed. I mean, I think for us to put up all kinds of protectionist barriers and have a trade war with our allies, what everyone thinks of the trade deal, would be disastrous and would cost us a lot of jobs. A lot of people in this country, including a lot of your listeners, work in companies that sell a lot abroad. And so if we suddenly have a trade war, we get a race to the bottom, right?
Well,
so he throws around these things that and on immigration. He wants to deport 11 million people, and nobody, what bugs me is nobody in the press really questions him hard on what that means. He wants that would take 100,000 buses. Do you want to go house to house? How else are you going to round everybody up and get them out of there? How about if a kid has been born here and is not to be deported, grabbing the legs of their mothers and fathers as they're pulled away by the cops? That's not our country, but that's the implication of what he's talking about. It sounds great. Oh, I'll handle it. It'll be just rely on me. Don't worry about the details. We'll get 11 million people out of here. How are you going to do it? Doesn't answer the question.
No,
nobody presses him on it.
You're right. He's not very well thought out. He's not very well thought out on that. And you're right. You and I do have a gentleman's disagreement on the trade.
But even you, Ed, you don't want a trade war. That's what you're called for.
No, I don't. I don't want a trade war. I do want it fair, and I do want it equal, and I don't want the Congress circumvented through international law. I think it's a disaster.
Well, those are all important things to discuss. But what he is talking about is he is resisting the I think toxic orthodoxy of the Republican Party. Just cut taxes on the rich and cut Social Security and Medicare in his rhetoric. But then when you actually look at his tax plan, and that's one area where he has been specific, it's even deeper tax cuts for the wealthy than many other Republicans have. So he tries to claim it's not, but when you actually look at the proposal, it is. So anybody who thinks that they're getting a kind of a centrist candidate in Trump hasn't been listening that closely to the things he has said, as unspecific as they've been.
All right, quickly, Paul Ryan, does he take the job as Speaker? What's going to happen in the House?
I think he's home on recess now. He's thinking about it. My understanding is his position is that he'll only take it if they all agree, the whole caucus agrees, and comes to him and says, you can have it with no strings attached. Like, you don't have to cut any deals, you don't have to make any promises to us. And I'm not sure that the so-called Freedom Caucus, I think they're better called the Kamikaze Caucus, and their Tea Party folks on the Republican side are going to go for that. So I wish I could give you a good prediction. I'd put it at about maybe 30-40% that he's the next Speaker.
All right. Jonathan Alter, political analyst, MSNBC, and also columnist for the Daily Beast. Great to have you with us. Appreciate your time, Jonathan.
Good talking to you.
When we come back, we're talking to Ruth Conniff about Paul Ryan. He's back on break in Wisconsin. Will he take the job? And what's his history on the core issues that the Democrats are very concerned about? That's next on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
The Ed Schultz Internet broadcast is brought to you by the Ring of Fire radio show. Listen to the Ring of Fire weekends on radio stations across the country. Get more information and the news of the day at ringoffireradio.com.
So it won't be Kevin McCarthy, for whatever reason, allegations that he's having some kind of an affair with another congressional member. I don't know. I don't care. The fact is that the Republicans have got so much power they can act however they want to act because of the gerrymandering. And I just believe that they are going off the rails because they know that they're never going to lose power in the House the way they have socially engineered the districts in this country. That being said, they're all now turning to Paul Ryan. We're turning to Ruth Conniff, editor of the Progressive Magazine of Wisconsin. Ruth, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Ed.
All right, let's review who Paul Ryan actually is. Would the Tea Partiers be getting exactly what they want? This is a montage of the 2012 election cycle, and of course, Paul Ryan being pretty tough on those who've lost their job.
Right now, about 60% of the American people get more benefits in dollar value from the federal government than they pay back in taxes. So we're going to a majority of takers versus makers in America.
Chasing ever higher spending with ever higher tax rates will decrease the number of makers in society and increase the number of takers.
We do not want to have a nation of a majority of takers. We want to have a nation of a majority of makers.
Today, 70% of Americans get more benefits from the federal government in dollar value than they pay back in taxes. So you could argue that we're already past that tipping point.
And we could also argue the fact that the fair share isn't being played out properly as corporations park trillions of dollars offshore, robbing the Treasury of the United States. So we know that Paul Ryan would protect the corporations. He doesn't want to change the tax code unless it favors the rich. And anybody who gets any kind of assistance from the government is going to be viewed as a taker. Is this guy Speaker of the House quality, Ruth?
Well, he's the guy they seem to want. I mean, even the head of the Freedom Caucus over the weekend said that they would look favorably on Ryan. And, you know, he's back here in Wisconsin waiting for them to come to him. And so there's this theory. I mean, he's really the flavor of the month now. There's this theory in Washington on all sides that he's the only option, that he's the guy who can actually unite this incredibly fractious caucus. And that may be the case. You know, it's possible that he can get everybody behind him, and he doesn't want to make any deals and offer to give up power for that to happen, and he may even be able to get that deal. But, you know, who he really is, what he's really like, pretty much embodies all of the Republicans' worst qualities, and frankly, the qualities that are costing them elections. So when he was Mitt Romney's running mate, not only did he say those things that you just played in those clips, he was the Todd Aiken candidate. You know, he was talking about rape and abortion in ways that really alienated women. He was the guy who talked about anchor babies and catch and release of immigrants. So he's got a Donald Trump problem on immigration. And not only is he for this grotesque inequality and this what he calls takers and makers, where we give public funds to the people who already have a lot of wealth on this trickle-down theory that that'll create jobs, a much disproven theory in America and lousy for workers. He's got a budget blueprint that spells it out. Privatize Social Security, voucherize Medicare, be so harsh towards the poor in this country that his own church, the Catholic Church, leaders of that church have roundly renounced his plan and asked him to please stop representing it as in any way related to Catholicism. So, you know, he's got some serious problems as the face of the Republican Party. It will be great for Democrats to run against Paul Ryan and his politics, but he may be the person that they end up choosing simply because they've got a problem. They got to find somebody.
He is far more to the right than John Boehner will ever be. There's no question about that. And he is relentless pushing on the very issues that you just talked about. So much that he even told the Association of Retired Persons, this is where we're going to go when it comes to your benefits.
The first step to a stronger Medicare is to repeal Obamacare, because it represents the worst of both worlds. It weakens Medicare for today's seniors and puts it at risk for the next generation.
So this would be a real shift to the right if Ryan is the guy, and he's in a very strong negotiating position, throwing down the gauntlet. You want me, it better be a House United or I'm not going to take it. So I would think that the Freedom Caucus would be encouraged by this. If you just look at his past statements and his positions, and he's already done enough damage as a chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. And I also think that tax reform wouldn't look anything like replenishing the Treasury, which we're going to need to do down the road. So isn't this really the wolf in sheep's clothing?
Yeah, I don't know why the sheep's clothing has been so convenient for Ryan, because, if you look at what he says, he's talking about austerity, and he's talking about rewarding corporations with even greater tax cuts. And then there's a lot of voodoo economics, which has been pointed out repeatedly by nonpartisan groups that actually analyze his budget plans. That he just claims that there's going to be all this growth that's going to emerge magically from some unspecified tax cuts. I've seen him whip through his PowerPoint. He does this PowerPoint presentation. He talks really fast. You see slide after slide that's supposed to show that, there's nothing worse for the economy than government spending and taxes, and there's nothing better for the economy than cutting taxes, and we can't afford to offer Social Security and Medicare to seniors anymore. And people love it because it's sort of an imitation of a smart guy. I think Paul Krugman said that Newt Gingrich was a dumb guy's idea of a smart guy. I mean, Paul Ryan has a little bit of that going on. He's flashy. He's got this presentation. If he takes this job and he has to try to enact laws and policies, and he has to be the face of that, you're going to see what happens when this stuff gets some reality behind it. And it's going to be real ugly for people. So, at some point, the reality of these economic policies hits home for the vast majority of voters. And I think that's part, frankly, of the reason that Paul Ryan lost his home state and his home district and his neighborhood in the presidential election for Mitt Romney.
Ruth Conniff, great to have you with us. Final question and insight from you. What do you expect out of the first Democratic debate tomorrow night in Las Vegas? Is this going to be a huge opportunity for Bernie Sanders? His name recognition is nowhere near Hillary Clinton. How do you see it unfolding? What are you looking for?
Well, I think it's just amazing that the Bernie Sanders campaign, which did not start, I think, with the idea that it would be at this level of seriousness and excitement, not to mention fundraising, which makes all of the mainstream media and political analysts pay much closer attention to Bernie. He is, it's Hillary and Bernie and those other guys in this debate, right? He is really in there. And he's going to talk about economic inequality. I think that's what he's always going to talk about. It's going to focus really hard on that. I mean, what's been interesting is to see Hillary scurry to catch up with Bernie on issues like the TPP, where he has always been, very dubious of these giant trade pacts that harm American workers. She's running over to his side on that. So I think in the debate, how do we distinguish their positions? She's now for putting people in jail on Wall Street who commit crimes. That's where Bernie's been for a long, long time. So, it may be that they can sound somewhat alike on that, which I think is healthy for the Democratic Party, because progressive politics are where the Democratic Party should be. But it will just be so interesting to see them on stage. I think Hillary will be extremely well prepared. She always is. She's really smart. And, I think it'll be just amazing to hear Bernie Sanders spell out what a real progressive agenda is for America. And it's great for America to really listen.
Good to have you with us. Ruth Conniff, Progressive Magazine, here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We'll do it again. Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, Ed.
I was really disappointed in listening to the president over the weekend sell the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is the president in his weekly address stating things that the very people who put him in office simply do not believe and know is wrong.
With this Trans-Pacific Partnership, we are writing the rules for the global economy. America is leading in the 21st century. Our workers will be the ones who get ahead. Our businesses will get a fair deal. And those who oppose passing this new trade deal are really just accepting a status quo that everyone knows puts us at a disadvantage.
So the status quo puts us at a disadvantage. Yet this president allowed his trade negotiators to go cut a deal with Japan, which would bring cars into this country that would allow up to 70% of foreign products made in China to be dropped on our market at no tariff. That is going to gut the automobile parts industry and be millions of jobs in this country, and the trickle-down effect is going to be devastating. I am astounded that this president has not been convinced that he is so wrong. He's never been so wrong on an issue in the past, not to mention the sovereignty issues that all of the unions are concerned about. Not one or two or four or five. Every single union in this country is against it. The very people that put President Obama in office, he could have never been elected or reelected without that help. He is turning his back on these people, and he is wrong on this issue. We are the number one customer in the world. We have the best consumers in the world, and getting to them just can't be free to these other countries. That's how I see it. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.